folks, it's Dane here again at JONAH Guitars, and we're going to be back on the acoustic, the two acoustics, and I'm going to be making some neck blanks. So I just wanted to discuss what I've decided to do and why I decided to do it. I decided to use, this is 1 inch, approximately 1 inch net thickness. Genuine mahogany blanks. Actually, it's 1 inch and 1/16. So they're 4x24 by 1 and 1/16, 1 inch nominal. I was going to weigh these. This one board is super light, and these other two aren't quite as light, but they're, and this one's even a little bit heavier yet. But you can see, I'm going to look at my monitor there. Those lines I've drawn are basically right next to the grain lines. And so it's a very, very quarter sawn, or vertically sawn if you get hung up on exactly where this came out of the tree. So there again, another one. That's lighter than this one. I need to weigh these. That's interesting. And then the super light one is actually what they call rift sawn. So it didn't quite make the quarter sawn cut, well, angled the wrong way. Quarter sawn, you'd be like that, right? But straight through the board. You notice I drew in some lines that are on 45-degree angles there, just to give you an idea of how, where the grain is. It's not at a 45-degree angle. That would be even worse. So these are 24 inches long. The whole idea with a I'm going to do scarf joint on these because that's what I believe these early Martins came with. They might have been a one-piece joint. They're very, very early ones were the V-neck joint, which I'm not going to do. 2 reasons. They're difficult. And second reason is I've just recently played a guitar that has that strict V-joint neck on it with the hard shoulders, and I don't like the way it feels. It's very... For me, it was very uncomfortable to play down at the nut. So, it's 2 different ways to do scarf joints. One way, you cut a longer peg head, and you cut an angle. It cuts on an angle here, and I'm drawing it on the wrong side of the board because you can't see it, or I'm indicating it. Cut it at an angle, and then you flip it around and you stick it to the other side of the board. Now, that joint gets supported by the fretboard if you use that type of joint. The other joint is shorter and it glues underneath, and then not only the angle on the board itself that's cut, but the peg head itself makes up the peg head or the headstock. But you do have a veneer over that, so that is not quite as strong a joint, but it's got the veneer over it, which strengthens it. The other thing is that there is no access for the truss rod cavity on the headstock end of these necks. That's going to be accessible from the sound hole. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with the scarf that goes under the peg head veneer. It's also going to be a slot head peg head. So trying to avoid the word peg head because it's technically a violin cello type of a term. Peg head, they got a peg box. The pegs go in there, not geared tuners or pegs. Anyway, so headstock. Okay. That's it for now. I'm going to true these boards up, and then as we go, I'll probably explain more about what is happening with the way these go together. Okay. Okay, back in here for a second. The lightest board is that rift sawn board, which if I need to, I'll use it for heel block stacks. That was 1 pound, 10.9 ounces, 10.9. 1 pound, 10.9. It's 1 pound, 11. Okay. This one is 1 pound, 11.5, and that is just another ounce. It's funny that I can feel the difference between those two. And then this one is 202.7. So that's a heavy piece of wood. I don't know if that tells you that you're going to have a stiffer neck or a more stable neck, or if it's just going to be heavier. The other thing about the weight is that there's going to be a fraction of what this board is left in the neck. All right, if you try to remember to weigh those necks after they're cut to size and finished, shaping and all that, just to see how much of a difference there was. There's really not much. How many ounces? Got 16, so 5 ounces basically difference between the medium and the heavy. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get one board faced, and we'll put the face against the fence, and that gives us a square front to edge, and then it'll go in the sander to make a parallel face here. I'm going to leave it to full thickness, or just what it takes to get it. All I have to do is leave myself like 3/4 of an inch, and I've got plenty to work with, so I'm not even going to get close to that. Peg head required thickness is 3/4 with the veneer on it, so 1/16 less than that, 11/16 or whatever, and then add a veneer back to it. I like to look at a board when I'm doing this because I want to run, I don't want to run the board through the joiner that has a belly in it, because you end up just rocking it. And so I prefer to run it, if there is a concave like that, you can see there is. And there's a slight twist in this board, but I'll take that out in no time at all with this. So I've got about 1/16 of an inch curve in the board. So I'm going to face that down. I've got the cutter, it's on a pretty light cut. You're not going to be able to hear anything once I fire this up. So I'm just explaining the process, so I'll do a little bit of it and then I'll just do the other one off camera. Again, just using this as a straight edge. Looks great. By the way, this mahogany is a dream to work with. I can't wait to get to the carving stage of this. It's going to be so nice to carve. I'm usually carving some sort of hardwood like wenge and maple combined, and then some walnut or something in there as well. Now you saw that I flipped it over and I actually jointed both edges. That's not how you get a parallel edge. I just had a wormhole in this edge and I don't know where it goes. So I'm hoping that it doesn't look like it goes straight in, so I think it's going to go up the board somewhere. I had another wormhole, let me grab that one real quick. Another wormhole right here, and it just comes out right there, so I know it's just barely on the board. That's not going to be an issue. I do have some kind of something here too though, and I don't see an exit, so we'll see. I also have a little tiny speck right there. Well, I like that these things are really well courtesan, but I don't like wormholes. Those are kind of a unknown quantity. So anyway, normally what you would do is you edge a face, you edge a side, and then you go into a planer, or in my case a sander. You sand it flat. That gives you parallel surfaces that are square to each other. And then you would run this through a saw, like a table saw, to guarantee that you had, but you could use a bandsaw as well on it with a fence. If you want to guarantee that your edges are parallel, I can measure them and see if they are close enough. I only need one straight edge on this just to set up a center line, because everything cuts away from it anyway. So I'm reading at just 4 1/16 fat on that, and I'm reading at 4 1/8 on this end. So I'm not parallel, but I'm only probably less than a 32nd out of parallel. Doesn't matter for what we're doing here. All right, I'm going to do the other board, and then I'm going to sand the boards, and then I'll come back in when we're cutting something else. I went ahead and put a center line on this, even though I don't need a center line per se, because I wanted to see where this little hole here, which I'm not sure what it all is. Oh, it looks like it might, hey, it goes that way. Good. I think it goes that way. Yeah, pencil lead is going in and it's going that way. So it's going away from here, which is good. This is 2¼ inches. So if that was the heel end of the neck, it would clip into that. So I'm going to make it the head end, so that because I know I'm cutting down below that at the neck itself is going to taper down there. So although I'm looking at this now and I'm seeing that yeah, I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, it's going to be close. So I'm going to do a 10-degree bevel. The plan actually calls for a 14-degree bevel. This is a slotted peg head beside, so above 10 degrees you're going to have down pressure into the slot, break angle. So 10 degrees is more. 10 degrees is plenty anyway, but I know that it's going to be more than 10 degrees, and you're less likely to break a headstock. Two things: if you have a scarf joint, or three things: if you have a laminated neck, and if you don't have a truss rod adjustment right here at the head end of the neck. So the truss rod adjustment will be at the butt end. So I'm going to have a nice strong scarf joint, no truss rod adjustment. I'm going to have a 10-degree angle, which is even stronger, and I'm going to have more angle on the strings down on the nut because of the grooved slotted peg head. I built a lot of guitars with 10-degree angles, and they are not a problem. Okay, so what did I do? I think I just marked 6 inches. I'm going to go ahead. My peg head is 6½ inches. I'm going to mark 7. And this is where I'm going to start my cut. And just for fun here, we'll draw the angle here. I haven't done one of these in a long time, and so I scratched my head a little bit to make sure I'm doing this right. But I'll explain the logic here. So this piece is going to cut off of here. You can't see anything. This piece is going to cut off of here. It's going to flip around underneath here. This flat section from here to here is going to start right where this section ends off. So in essence, all of this rake is cut into the head angle. And so the length of the peg head after the cut is pretty much 6 inches plus this piece, which is 1¼ inches. So I'll have an even longer 1 3/8 inches, even longer peg head. Now the fun thing about this is that once it's glued, you can mill material off the top of the neck to move the nut one way, and then mill material off the face of the, I said peg head again, didn't I? Off of the face of the headstock in order to move the nut the other way. So this has got some bit of adjustment to it, and being that my finished material ended up just a fuzz under 1 inch and just a fuzz over 15/16, so it's right in the middle of those two dimensions. So I also have a jig that I built, like 2 jigs that I built a long time ago to cut scarf joints on my bandsaw. And my 1/4 inch bandsaw blade was super dull, so I just put a 3/8 bandsaw blade on, and we're going to cut this. Okay, so it takes a little doing to get this lined up with the blade. You just slide the jig. It's just, I got one piece that's wider than these. It goes into the groove on the table, and see, that's rocking a little bit. So I'm going to just push it down as I go to make sure that it's, looks like it's hitting the blade square. I've seen guys cut these by hand and they're not clean, and it doesn't matter because when you flip this around, you're going to mill this all off the same. So it's a nice clean joint before the glue up. Okay, so here we go again with noise. All right, as you can see, this didn't cut perfectly square. This is not a surprise. I'm gonna check that side. That side's not actually bad, I don't think. Let me see here. Rolled up a little bit right here, but it's actually pretty square. This side, however, yeah, actually that looks pretty square too. So, it did leave a ridge right here, and I can take a block plane and knock that off. I can also do what I'm going to do, which is double stick this, tape this right down to the top of the other board. Then I'm going to run it. I will go ahead and knock that down with a block plane. And I run it through my joiner and correct this, you know, any error here, because it'll be square on the edge of the joiner, and it'll travel right through, so it'll go through square. So we're golden. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this down, and then I'll take a little block plane and clean that up. A lot of people do this by hand. They'll just stick it together and then they'll plane off this angle together. I'm not that confident in my planing. And then some people, I saw, who's that guy in Australia? Fletcher. Fletcher actually made himself a device, a little box with a sanding block on the appropriate angle for what his headstock, you know, pitch is, and then he just sands it in, and so the joiner is way faster. All right, we're good. So, because this is so thin here, it's not sticking down real good, but I went ahead and pushed my straight edge up against this thing, and it I don't know if you can see that or not. It parallels perfectly when you put some pressure on it. So we're good in the middle, we're good over there. Now, one thing I didn't check, but it looks like we're pretty good there as well, is whether or not we were square down on this line here. Where's that edge right there? It's hard to see that edge. And we're perfect. Okay. So this is going to go like that. And I am just going to do that a little bit. Then I'll mill this face off to where everything is just right. So I think this is where, I don't know that you can see that, but now it's displaying. So I don't want to be shy where I have a notch coming into it here. I want to be right, either right up to the edge there or even past it, just a fuzz. Then this will all plane in together after the glue up. And let's see what my peg head length is here. This is where my nut is. On these Martins, the nut actually starts at the peg head and is on a rake. Now, if I were building, and I'll do this later, when I'm building my own acoustic guitar, my own design, I'm not going to do that. I think that's a stupid thing to do. So now the bottom of this nut has to be angled. Instead of just being square with the top of the fretboard, it has to be angled to meet the rake on the peg head face. And then it's locked in with the veneer. So you've got a little kind of point thing going on there where it slips in and drops it in front of the fretboard. Anyway, so we're going to say right there, and then plus 3/4 of an inch. So, and I can lengthen that if I need to. By simply taking more material off of here, it will push this nut back. So I'm going to glue it right where it is showing. Right there. Yep, so I'm just going to make myself a couple marks there so I know where I want that to be. I see a lot of guys do pins, you know, and pins are okay. I mean, they're well out of the width of the the actual peg head and or neck or anything like that. So, but all you really got to do is clamp yourself something here at the end of the board, clamp yourself something here, and then clamp the neck to the board so that it can't move. And then this can't slide down. You don't even have to clamp something here. If I can move this down a little bit actually. Yep, so I'm on top of my table, so otherwise when I'm just on a regular bench, I just get it close to the edge and then just clamp it right down to the edge of the bench. But in this case, oh, I need to get a little piece of paper so I don't glue this to the board. All right, so I'm covered. Okay, since I jointed all the edges, everything's square to everything. This isn't going anywhere. Can't slide anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and glue that. I didn't leave myself enough room here. So what I'll do is I'll move it down because I want to be able to get a clamp right here so it can't kick out. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm still happy with where this is at. Just sticking this on here temporarily so that it, there we go, so I can adjust this one here where I want it. Okay. Looks pretty good right there. All right, so you see this little clamp right here? Yes, you can. All right, so it can't slide down now. And generally, it's not a bad idea to kind of test clamp things to make sure stuff is going to pull together. I can see that all my joints are going to pull up really nice and tight. I do have a couple shims right here that will go here to keep from marring anything when I clamp, and I'll do the same thing on this side. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some glue on here. Now if this were for some reason had a laminate down the middle of it, if it were a multi-lam neck, and you were doing, I don't know why you would do that. I've thought about doing it just because it looks good. In fact, I think I've seen it done. I know I have. David, I believe, has done this over at Ewar. Take a laminate and you flip the peg head. I'm mad at myself. Headstock. You flip it around. Making sure we've got good coverage. It's groovy. Okay, so I'm gonna have to run and get a couple clamps, I think, or not clamps, shims. See if I have room to get all this in this little clamp here. Oh, good. Oh, paper towel. I usually put a clamp here as well to make sure that it's pushing it all down to the table and not riding up. And this one appears to be wanting to ride up a little bit. Probably because as I squeeze this, it wants to push it that way, and it's being held in the bottom corner, so it wants to make it come up. So we're gonna get a big clamp and put it out here where I can go across that. I think I have the reach. Trying to find, there's something to clamp to underneath there. Now we're cooking. All right, so that's not going to come up now. We can crank these down. All right, so at some point while I was doing the clamp up here, I think I just had a couple of the little blue clamps on the top, and I started, I put the big clamp, which I already have off of there, just to hold the thing flat down onto the table board here. The battery beeped at me, so I know the battery went off. So I'm just bringing you back in here just to show you the final arrangement of clamps. And what I did was I had the two cauls on the top side, and I put clamps on those, and then I needed cauls on the bottom side, so I put clamps on those. And then I realized that it would have been better to have done cauls straight up and down on either end, and then maybe one through the center and clamped them that way. But I ended up adding some cauls in between the other two, just so I got that center pressure on the joint. So the next one I do, I'm going to run the cauls vertically at each end where the taper meets the end of the glue up there, and then one in the middle. I'm going to leave that little guy down there because I'll just move the next one in the same spot. So that guy's definitely glued down. See that big blob of glue right there? I'll clean that up before the next one. And we have just some glue puddled up there. Now this is fish glue. I don't know if I mentioned that yesterday. So, a couple things. Well, we'll start with one thing. One thing I wanted to mention for sure was when I was a cabinet maker, and I got several cabinet making publications every month. magazines. This was pre-internet. Anyway, and there was this concept, an idea going around, and I don't think it's wrong at all. I think it was right, and so I was kind of surprised. Sorry, I'm making a lot of background noise. I need to just talk. There was this idea going around that if you glued up cabinet panels, whether they were going to be just solid flat panels or whether the whole door was a flat panel door or whether the door was a raised panel door, when you're gluing up panels, you needed to let them dry completely before you milled them, because you could start machining them before the glue was completely dry, and then it would continue to dry. And as it did that, if you had a joint going down the middle of the board, it would continue to dry, and that joint would actually dry and shrink into, at the seams, at the glue ups, you would have little divots where the seams weren't finished drying before you milled them. They would continue to dry. Now, I don't know who popularized the idea, because it says so on the glue bottle that you don't only need to keep it in clamps for, an hour or 2 hours. I think I've heard 20 minutes. I should read the bottle. But anyway, there's a very short amount of clamping time actually due, but there's still drying time that is needed before you start machining the wood. Now this has been in clamps for, what time is it? It's coming up on 3 o'clock. It was probably 5:30 or 6 when I glued this up last night. And so it's not quite 24 hours. I'm not sure what the recommended period of time to make sure you didn't have any shrinkage was. But I do know that it was actually something that was discussed a lot in magazines and, around cabinet building. So anyway, just throwing that out there. I'm not sure who popularized the idea. Now, maybe it was Ben Crow during one of his 12-hour builds or something where he didn't have time for glue to dry completely, but it was together enough to continue working on the project. So I think maybe that idea got some traction through him or through others that were doing the same sort of thing. Part of the reason I'm saying that is I'm going to go ahead and mill this just so the cohesiveness of this video, I can just wrap this up rather than waiting for a couple days before I do this. And the reason why I'm not worried about it in this situation is this is going to get sanded or surfaced again anyway. I'm just demonstrating what to do here. Okay, there's a bit of a ridge here that has to come off, which then again, this isn't going to hurt a thing because this is plenty thick for the headstock. All right, so I figured out what the length of this neck was going to have to be, and I chopped it. Now, that's not going to be enough for a stacked heel, so I'm glad I got the other board. I thought 24 inches was supposed to take care of you. I could split this at 2 inches and stack it, and I'll figure that out. I'll lay it out. I might be able to do that and get enough, or because the heel tapers, and this is 4 inches wide anyway, so it doesn't need to be that wide for sure. So anyway, but let's finish this particular video here. This is about scarfing a neck, not necessarily finishing a neck or stacking the heel blocker in it. I'm putting this down to a very, very fine cut. Right now I'm bottomed out. I'm just going to drop this thing a skosh or fuzz. I don't want to go into the machine this way because you'll see I'll be cutting into the grain here. That would just tear that all up. So I got to make sure I run it through this way. And when I run this one through, I can run it either way really, but I'll run it from the butt end in if I need to. I just want to skin this down just so that this little joint right here is perfect. And I actually just took it off with the block plane, and I could sanding block that and get it perfect, but I'm going to run it through the joiner because to me that's more perfect. So one time through, perfectly flat. I'm not 100% sure this is square. I'm a little bit off a square here, so I'm going to have to fiddle with that a bit. All I have to do basically is put a little shim on one edge so it starts a little different, and then it'll plane out. I know you hand plane people can do that without even blinking twice. Or once, I guess. I don't know how many times you blink. Okay, so this is going to finish this up. I just, this wasn't about doing an entire neck or anything. It was just about doing the scarf joint. I will probably bring you back in as I progress with these necks, you know, with the truss rod channel and carving and even stacking the heel to get that. So we have that now. I went about 3/4 of an inch longer than where it met the body. So it meets the body at the 12th fret in this case. And that was 12 5/8 from the nut. You got to have the mortise. You got to have the tenon. And then you also, I just added another little bit for error because error happens. All right. Thank you, folks. Take care. Dane at JONAH Guitars. Do all the good stuff. Click stuff, like stuff, share stuff. Send me money. Yeah, all that good stuff. Later.